Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. Sunday, March 10th is Oscar night. And if you're looking for a podcast predicting this year's winners or a recap of this year's nominees, you're in the wrong place. But if you're looking for some insight into the mysterious machinery that is the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, you've come to the right place. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, inspiration to be found from the rich history of the Oscars. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
Hello, I want to talk to you about the Academy Awards. I'm going to give you my take on what I think it is, what I think it isn't. We're going to examine some films where Hollywood's had an opportunity to hold a mirror up to itself. So why should you listen to me? I am not a member of the Academy. I can tell you that it is an exclusive club. It's a fraternity. And it's been my experience that those members, when they vote, they're really voting based upon artistic merit versus commercial merit. I really do believe that. To go to the Academy Awards is an attendant. You can't buy a ticket. It's the hardest ticket in town to get. You know, you're usually a guest or you're a nominee or you're a member of the Academy. That's it. I've held an Oscar. It was a privilege to hold an Oscar. It's about 18 inches long. It's heavy. It's beautiful. In my opinion, I would rather have an Academy Award than a Nobel Prize. Why, Jonathan? Can you tell me who won the Nobel Prize for chemistry or physics last year? Can you tell me which film won Best Picture? Best Actor, Best Actress? You could tell me who the winners were of the Oscars versus the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize, I believe it's worth several $100,000 in prize money. Guess what? You win an Oscar, you don't get any prize money. You get the adoration, you get the respect of a community of artists that really, really care about motion pictures. They really do. It's demonstrated in my belief. I've been watching the Academy Awards since the 1960s, that when they vote artistic merit and they don't vote commercial merit. It's about the art. I can tell you the Oscar as an award is very coveted. What I mean by that is, for one reason or another, I believe it's estate taxes. Sometimes it's just bad luck. Sometimes Oscars that were awarded to some very famous people will end up in private hands and they trade at auction. And I can tell you there are some benefactors who are members of the Motion Picture Arts and Sciences that when these Oscars go to auction, they will step in, bid whatever is necessary, obtain the Oscar, and donate it back to the Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences. I think that that is a beautiful thing, and that speaks to the fraternity. This is an exclusive fraternity. In my estimation, it's probably the most exclusive fraternity there is. Gee, Jonathan, why are you qualified to talk about the Academy Awards? I grew up outside of Hollywood in Southern California. Grew up in the 60s. Back in the 60s, when we watched the Academy Awards, you could not record the program. You had to sit there when it came on, and you were hesitant to take a bathroom break because you didn't want to miss any of the action. It was really, really exciting to watch the Academy Awards. It was glitz and glamour, largely apolitical. I'll come back to that in a minute. And it was all about the winners. And back in the 60s and 70s, there's a tectonic shift in the amount of talent producing, directing, and writing films that you had so many wonderful, wonderful films vying for Best Picture, Best Director, actresses. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time where you'd have multiple pictures that you saw, all vying for this award. And I also had parents that would take me to these films as a kid in the 60s, films that were not made for kids, but they would take me along, so I had the benefit of that. My parents were in the restaurant business, so they had Hollywood people, studio people come in and out of the restaurant. So I had the privilege of owning a copy of the Godfather script and the album for the soundtrack before the movie was released. When I was in high school in the 70s, I would skip class, and often with a friend we'd drive over to the studios where game shows were being produced. We'd get a ticket. I could care less about the game show, but as we were all leaving the studio, as everybody was turning right, me and my buddy would turn left and we'd roam around the studio lot. Fast forward, I'm a film student in LA, and I would have the privilege of being invited onto the studio lots, and we would have lectures from luminaries in Hollywood on the studio lot. When I was a student, for whatever reason, they tapped me on the shoulder, and I'd be the guy who would have to go out to the front gate of campus and intercept the motion picture luminary, front of the camera, back of the camera, executive suite, and escort them to the classroom. So I had an opportunity to chit-chat during that escort. As a student, I had the opportunity to work within the distribution end of motion pictures. That simply means getting the motion pictures out into the theaters and accounting for the ticket sales. That's how you keep score. And I got to speak to a lot of people on the studio lots that were involved with distribution. And that's the money. That's very, very important. Did it interest me? No. I was a creative guy. All of this just adds up to the point of what I'm going to tell you when I get to my takes about what the Academy Awards are and what they aren't. So I've laid the groundwork for the fact that I believe it's, in my estimation, the most special fraternity on the face of the earth. In my estimation, I would rather have an Oscar than any other award on the face of the earth. I have told you that it is a very select club. I have told you that it is a club, a fraternity, that cares about art. When they vote, they're voting art, not commerce. That's my belief, watching the winners year in, year out since the 1960s. Now, let's ask ourselves, well, has Hollywood ever held up a mirror to itself and looked at the Academy Awards? And if so, what do we see? Well, let's explore some films, and I'll attempt to answer that question for you. I'm going to try to do it in chronological order, and I'm going to talk very quickly because I try to keep these podcasts brief. Let's go to 1952, Kirk Douglas, The Bad and the Beautiful. This is about a ruthless motion picture producer and how he mistreats an actress, a director, and a writer. It's not about the Academy Awards. Inside Daisy Clover, Natalie Wood and Robert Redford and Christopher Plummer, 1965. Natalie Wood plays this kid who, by virtue of talent, gets sucked into the studio system, is mistreated, chewed up, and spit out by a ruthless producer played by Christopher Plummer. But I want you to watch that film for Robert Redford, because I got to tell you, he still had Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Twilight Zone episodes sticking to him. And I think he had just finished Barefoot in the Park, or that was around the corner. But I want you to watch him, because the star quality just shines off of Robert Redford. And kudos to Robert Redford for taking this role, because when you watch his character, he plays a film star. And who that film star is and what his preferences are and the like, it was a very gutsy move by Robert Redford at a critical moment in his career. Inside Daisy Clover. I got to go back in time because I skipped one. Sunset Boulevard, William Holden, Gloria Swanson, 1950. It's about a writer, William Holden, right? And we're introduced to him. He's kind of a starving writer. And I think Jack Webb is in that, if I'm not mistaken. And he's got a little group of friends, and they're all on the fringe of Hollywood. And Holden takes a job, and you know the whole story. It's not about the Academy Awards. By now you should be saying to yourself, gee, what's going on here, Jonathan? Why didn't anybody talk about the Academy Awards in a movie yet? 1976, The Last Tycoon, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Robert De Niro. They say he was playing Irving Thalberg. We will never know. But he plays a studio chief. Boy, genius. And we see the day in the life of a studio chief. Very interesting. I enjoyed that. Last Tycoon. Now, let's jump up to 1992, The Player. Oh, certainly, Jonathan, The Player. Yeah, that's the one. Tim Robbins plays a studio executive. You know what The Player was all about? The Player was a voyeuristic look at the layers of the Hollywood studio hierarchy. And what I mean by that, Tim Robbins' character was maybe a senior VP, an executive VP within a studio. And he's the person that took all the meetings with the agents and the writers and would kind of green light pictures, but not really, because he reported, if you remember, to a gray-haired guy who would actually make the decisions. And I've got to tell you, based on my experience, when I was going through interviews in Hollywood, I saw it up close and personal. I thought it was a very realistic portrayal of the hierarchy, the management hierarchy within studios. And for that reason, I enjoyed the film. When it went off into some murder mystery, I think it fell off the tracks. The Player, 1992. Then there was a television series. Remember, I believe it was HBO, Entourage, 2004 to 2011. Young group of guys in Hollywood. It's very interesting. I think that what that really showed was what the trappings of success are about. My takeaway really was the agent character, Jeremy Piven. Maybe played to some excess, but their vigorous representation, etc., their maniacal deal-making ability, I thought that came through the series wonderfully. But gee, Jonathan, you still haven't talked about a movie about the Academy Awards. Surely, after all these decades, Hollywood have held up a movie about the Academy Awards and the importance of the Academy Awards. They did. And it was made in 65. I believe it was released in 66. And it's called The Oscar. I was watching this thing in 66, maybe 65. So that would have made me 7 or 8 years old. And every time it would come on, I would watch it. My eyes would be glued to this thing. It starred Stephen Boyd. Stephen Boyd played this going to be successful at all costs type of actor. Elke Summer was wonderful. Tony Bennett was in it. Ernest Borgnine, by the way, Ernest Borgnine won Best Actor Oscar for Marty in the 1950s, early in his career. Milton Berle was in it. Joseph Cotten, gee, wasn't he a protege of Orson Welles? Yes, he was. Joseph Cotten is in this movie. Jill St. John, Ed Begley, Walter Brennan. And Broderick Crawford, All the King's Men, Oscar for Best Actor early in his career. I did a podcast about Broderick Crawford. I did a podcast about Ernie Borgnine, both of whom won Best Actor Oscars earlier in their career, up front. And what did they do after winning an Academy Award? Well, I can tell you, they both went back to work. It's ironic because both of these guys are in this film. And Broderick Crawford, if he has 10 minutes of screen time in this film, remember it's 66, he was doing highway patrol up through the 50s, and he's got about 10 minutes of screen time in this film. And he's an Oscar winner for Best Actor along with Ernie Borgnine. I just see the irony of this whole thing. But what's interesting about this film, I'm watching this thing at 8 years of age and then through the 60s and up through the 70s, and I'm getting it. I'm getting the personalities. I'm getting the whole point it's driving home about the ruthlessness of Hollywood and the shenanigans and the win at all costs. I'm getting it as a kid. And when this came out, it was really treated like a B movie. It really was. But Joseph E. Levine, remember him? Joseph E. Levine produced this, wrote the check. What did Joseph E. Levine do later, in about 2 years? When nobody wanted to make The Graduate, because Mike Nichols was attached to it, Mike Nichols went out on a limb and casted Dustin Hoffman. Joseph E. Levine stepped up and wrote the check for The Graduate. So when Joseph E. Levine produced this film, The Oscar, he saw something. And Stephen Boyd, check his filmography out. He brought it in his character. In fact, everybody brought it. And why this film got this reputation as a B film, I will never know. Because I've got to tell you, for decades, I could not find this film up until recently. I couldn't find it online. I couldn't find it on YouTube. I finally purchased a DVD off of Amazon. I encourage you to do the same. I want to see this film revived. I want to see it on that premium movie channel because it deserves it. It's not a B film. In my estimation, it is the closest portrayal of how important an Academy Award is to an actor, actress, director, or anybody else in terms of their career. And if you watch the movie, you'll know what I mean. And it's interesting, when I watched this movie recently, you've got to do the math, okay? I'm an adult now, and I'm watching this movie that impressed me as a kid. I came to the conclusion that, man, Jonathan, what you understood then as a kid, you understand today. And I was even in more awe of the film. The film has legs. It stands to this day. Well, gee, Jonathan, why did the film get this rap as a B movie? I can only conclude the following. It was released in the mid-1960s. There's two 1960s. There's 1960 through 66, which was kind of the innocent 60s. And then there was 67 through 70, which was psychedelics and war protests and all that. I think this just came out in that middle period. And because there was so many great films coming out, and there were, it just got lost in the shuffle. But kudos to Joseph E. Levine. The fact that he is attached to this should tell you it was ahead of its time. That's my answer to you. It was ahead of its time. I only have 2 DVDs. One was given to me as a gift, Clockwork Orange, because I'm a nut for the film and for Kubrick. And the other film is The Oscar. It's $10 on Amazon. Go buy a copy of it. So what does the Oscar really mean to those vying for it? Well, it's a dual-edged sword, double-edged sword. If you're Ernie Borgnine and you're Broderick Crawford and you win the Oscar early on in your career, it's like, what do I do next? Do I sit back and I only wait for Oscar-quality scripts, or do I go to work? And in the case of both of those gentlemen, they just went to work. Hey, I'm a working actor. I'm going to take what I can get, and that's it. Maybe it's kind of a relief. Hey, I got the award. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Now I can just work, take what comes my way. On the other hand, I think in present day, I think that winning the award, let's say for Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, I think it puts you in a position of bargaining power in terms of negotiating certainly your fees, but it also puts you in a position of where maybe you won't take chances anymore. You're just going to wait for that great script to come along. And it's reverse logic because when you do take chances, let's face it, no risk, no reward, right? That's when more Oscars will come your way. But I've seen it happen time and again where somebody that was rarely heard from or was off the radar screen will, and it happens a lot really in the supporting actors classifications where it really makes a career, catapults somebody. But then maybe you don't hear from them as much as you would normally. So see the double-edged sword aspect of it? So the Academy Award show is just that. It's a community, it's a fraternity that comes together, and even though it's a big show, it's on television, we're all invited to watch it, it's not really what that's about. It's really about this community, this membership, this fraternity honoring its own, and it's a beautiful thing. The Oscar it's a beautiful statute, it's heavy, it's unique, and it's a metaphor because it can make careers. Winning can make careers. You've seen time and again where people will spend their entire career and never win. They'll be nominated, but they'll never win. You'll see the Irving Thalberg Award nominated. It's usually, I think it's the first award that's presented. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award. And they usually give this to somebody that really, really deserves the recognition. But there are folks that have multiple Oscars. And then there are those that have been in contention that never win. So it's very, very interesting. It's an oddity. But it's a coveted award. And don't think for a minute that those people that are vying for this award, regardless of the category, don't think for a minute that they don't give a damn. They give a damn, believe me. Not only for career purposes, but also for the recognition. So with that being said, if you're one of those people that watches the Academy Awards, maybe my observations will allow you to look at it differently. As for me, I gave up watching a long time ago. It's just, to me, it seems to be more about the show than about the substance. And I'll be very frank with you. I happen to come of age in a time when the pipeline of quality films up for nomination was so gigantic that in subsequent years it just can't compare. Do I care when I read about who won, who didn't? Yes. Have there been years where I really cared about a film and was curious about it, whether it won or not, or an actor, actress won, or a director won or not? Yes. But not like it used to be. It has not diluted my respect for the award and for the Academy. But I will say this in closing. It's great to make biographies. Really, to recognize people in history. It's great. But writers, write. Writers, let's write stories that haven't been told. Or let's write stories that have been told, but let's tell them differently. Biographies are great. But so are original stories. And maybe, just maybe, as the years tick by, I'll be invited back into the television screen, and there'll be multiple films, vying for Best Picture. Multiple actors and actresses vying for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor. And I'm leaving out the cinematographers, I'm leaving out the lighting. Yes, I am, I'm sorry. But those people too, they're all counted and they need to be recognized. Just maybe I'll see that day again, and I hope it's sooner rather than later. I want to wrap up this podcast with a pep talk. A pep talk to those creative writers. You're not genre writing. You're writing for film, you're writing for television, you're writing for the stage, you're writing a book. But what you're really writing is to get your story on the big screen. So I'm trying to tie this pep talk back into the awards ceremony. So you are a creative writer, you're cutting edge, you're bending genres, you're not locked into this shoot 'em up, rom-com, superhero thing. You're an outlier. And you believe in what you're doing because new stories must be told. And whatever media we're talking about needs those stories told. But I understand, I feel your pain. All those mediums, the business, they're tone deaf, meaning they're like a lot like insurance company actuarial. So what I mean by that is it's about loss mitigation. Think about it for a minute. If you can green light another superhero film, and there was 2 or 3 superhero films before that all grossed hundreds of millions of dollars in worldwide box office. You want to keep your job and you want to make the shareholders happy and the board of directors happy. It's loss mitigation. You're not going to take a risk on a genre-bending story. You're going to make the safe bet. So with that being the business model out there, and I mean Hollywood and I mean the publishing world, it's all about loss mitigation from a business standpoint. And you may know this, you may not know it, but what I want to do is reinforce that. That's what everybody is up against. Profit maximization, loss mitigation. So what are you left with? You're left with nonprofit film festivals. I'm not going to name what they are. Trying to get into one of those. That's like sand filtering through an hourglass. Only one pebble of sand is going to make it through. Film festivals, writing competitions, hoping somebody sees it. But it is tough. It is really, really tough. The point is, I want you to go back through the history of the Academy Awards, year by year, and look at the best picture for that year. Look at the best screenplay award, not adaptation from a book. I'm talking about somebody that actually wrote for the screen. And not every year, but you're going to stumble upon a year where that one story was told. It came out of left field, man. And it bowled everybody over. And you know something? Maybe it didn't equate to big box office, but it resonated with the Academy to the point that they wanted to honor it. And I challenge you to do this exercise because you will have hope. Because trust me, in this endeavor, it's all about hope. And you know it, and I know it. And in the past, particularly at the studios, film studios, they would have divisions that were for more of the, quote, art house, independent film, unquote. Those terms are kind of murky. I'm reticent to even use them. That was kind of an open door. And occasionally I'll see a film come through one of those, but it seems to me like a lot of those divisions have gone quiet, or they're just not supported to the degree they're not. But go back through the history of these Academy Awards and look at the Best Picture winners, or even look at some of the nominees, Best Screenplay nominees, Best Picture nominees, and look for those outliers. Look for those courageous films that somehow made it through the gauntlet, and that's what it is. And I hope that will give you sustenance, and I make a plea to Hollywood, the Academy, that you keep your heart open. And I know your heart is open to these stories. I know it because I've seen you vote valiantly since the 1960s. Keep that flame burning, Hollywood. Keep that flame burning, Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. Because at the end of the day, you're the flame keeper. You're the gatekeeper to keep this beautiful medium called film alive. And the way you're going to stoke those embers, stoke those flames of creativity is by taking chances. Taking chances on new and novel stories, courageous stories that haven't been told. So with that being said, keep on writing, and we will hope for the best. Till I see you next time, enjoy the show. Class is dismissed.
And regardless of who walks away with the statue this Sunday, may the Oscar go to the dreamers and the risk-takers in front of and behind the camera. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at the Jonathan B. Farini Story Collection at jonathanfarini.com. There you'll find everything from drama to romance, something for every reader. That's jonathanfarini.com, Farini with 2 R's, 1 N. Or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.